Okay, hi. So thank you for coming to the presentation and checking this out. It's an honor to get to present some of the stuff I've been doing and did before. And yeah, again, if you have questions, please ask them at the end. And we'll kind of go from there. So I titled this "The Grass is Green on Both Sides," just to, as the expression is, there's always it's always greener on the other side. But now that I've done both as an athlete and a coach, you learn that both sides are actually pretty awesome. Okay, so about me, I was on the national team around 2008-9 to 2018. It's hard to really say, but I felt like I was on the national team and did events in that time. So for a reasonably long time, stopped right before COVID in a way. So I guess that was a bit of luck on my end. One of my top results was I got to compete at the 2012 Olympics in London with Grace Gow. So that was really a special moment in my career. I think we achieved the highest world ranking in mixed doubles of 16 for about 5 weeks. So that was kind of cool as well. On the school side, I did, take school seriously. So I did pursue coaching sciences. I was fortunate to get to do a master's in high performance coaching and technical leadership out at UBC. They're always looking for new cohorts. Definitely recommend the program. I actually learned a lot more, kind of seeing how the top sports in Canada did things differently, and they had, the same things as well. And then that led to the advanced coaching diploma. And also I got other things as well as like the CSCS certification for strength and conditioning and precision nutrition level 1. So I do have a little bit of nutrition and strength and conditioning background. I actually did a couple years in sport administration, so I got to experience that as well as the performance lead and technical director for Badminton BC. I got to coach a couple teams, coach at the Canada Winter Games for Team BC, and I also coached the UBC team a bit. And now my current position is a high performance coach at Bellevue Badminton Club. So basically, a lot of my badminton comes from a few key coaches. I would credit Daryl Young and Kim Dong-moon, but I've had the opportunity to learn from other greats, including Ra Kyung-min, Nathan Robertson, Thomas Stabengard, and Tony Gunawan, who are all former players. So basically about me, I'm just pretty, I have a diverse background as a player, but also I do respect that you should know as much as you can about the coaching science and related fields. And the time I spent in sport administration, the grass is definitely not greener on that side, but I do understand and highly respect those poor souls. Thank you for your service because it's often a thankless job. And yes, thank you. Okay, anyways. So the outline for today is I'm going to kind of go through what's your philosophy, maybe as an athlete and as a coach, and then just observations and some biases as through the lens of the gold medal profile, which is something I think all sports in Canada are striving to go towards. And then they divide it into 4 key sections. So the physiological, which I might just say physical because that also could be the same thing in a way, technical, tactical, and the psychological. And then at the end, just key lessons as an athlete, key lessons as a coach, and then we'll have questions. Okay, let's get started. So what is your philosophy? So this was an exercise I had in my master's program. And we had to create a coaching philosophy. And I started this kind of right after my run for Rio. So this is like post 2016. And it was pretty good because I was still competing. And I also kind of asked myself, what is my athlete philosophy? And in the end, because I did have my coaching philosophy done already, I felt that it still fit. So I now have just the one philosophy for both coaching and competition. So basically what I'll say here is that this is just kind of mine. I will share mine, but you can kind of make your own. And I would recommend that you have your own if you're a coach. And as players, you should also have your own. It's a worthy exercise because these kind of beliefs and values will shape kind of how you make certain decisions. So with that said, one of my first ones, which I loved this movie, for this one line, progress, not perfection. It just sounds way better when Denzel Washington says it. Sorry for the gun in the poster. I think I've been in the US a little too long now, but that's kind of where it goes. So it pretty much speaks to be like consistent progress over time, focus on the process, build good habits, and then having those effects compound. And maybe turning obstacles into opportunities would be something that would kind of fit in this part as well. The second part is ego is the enemy. So again, from the quotes, the need to be better than, more than, recognized for, far past any reasonable utility, that's ego. It follows with, it's the sense of superiority and certainty that exceeds the bounds of confidence and talent. So finding a balance of confidence and humility really makes everything a lot easier. Third one is to lead by example. I love this quote by Robert Greene. Instead of trying to push them from behind, make them run to keep up with you. I would pretty much say that this is to keep yourself accountable. Don't do crazy things that you wouldn't have done yourself, especially if you're a coach. So I don't make my players do excessive burpees if I would not do excessive burpees myself. So I'm quite peculiar on how things are done. So that's what, it'd just be fair to share that with the players you work with. And I do credit the two coaches in the pictures, Kim Dong-moon at the top and Daryl Young at the bottom, because they're also former players turned coaches. This one is be formless, shapeless like water, be water, my friend, from Bruce Lee. Really, it just means to be adaptable, just like water. So make the most of things and be able to adapt to different situations. It's great for badminton, but even better for life. And then this one is add value to others. This is actually from John C. Maxwell. I think he's a pastor and a pretty renowned author. To be fair, like I just wanted one more thing to add to my philosophy to have, 5 things. 4 was kind of like nice, but I wanted 5. So I just put this one in because I actually happened to hear him speak at the time. So it kind of fit, but I'm glad I did, because the more I coach, the more this really resonates. And I believe John Maxwell does say, like, you have to first value people before you can add value to them. So if anything, coaching itself embodies this entire idea, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to help and give back to other people. All right, so we're gonna kind of go through observations and of course biases based on things I've seen as an athlete and as a coach. They're kind of all merged together now because I still do a bit of both. But again, we're gonna go through this lens because if you're going into coaching, this is probably stuff you want to consider. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, so here's a bunch of stuff, and I will explain everything in due time, but the first bias I would have in terms of physiological attributes is strength. I feel strength is the most important attribute for me. Why? Because primarily injury prevention for both as an athlete and for coaches as well. A good base of strength will make many bad things go away, where fitness doesn't necessarily help, right? Just because you're fit enough to do like a lot of lunges on court doesn't mean you can have the strength to push back out from a deep lunge. Strength is also a precursor to power, and it helps with the agility, or more importantly, I guess, change of direction. And how I would define that, or how it is supposed to be defined, is agility is also with a stimulus. Change of direction is just not with the stimulus. So both are important, and strength will help with both. So again, there's many camps I guess you could follow. The ones I like to follow the most are Strong First, the work from primarily Pavel Tsatsouline, and also from Dan John, because I religiously do his Easy Strength program, and I've been doing it for years, and I believe it's just very simple to follow. I like the use of kettlebells. So the image in the top top left-hand corner of the screen. But mainly the hardstyle kettlebell swing. So not the competition ones. I like the wider handles for the two-handed swings and other things you can do with that. And hardstyle also will fit in with the work from Strong First. So again, why do I like these people? Again, it's just total preference. There's all these other people that are also really good. And again, that's just my bias there. The next point is recovery training. So I am kind of lazy as an athlete. So again, to be efficient, I always be like, I'm more, biased toward recovery. So it's like, I'm not fully recovered. I probably shouldn't push it. So if you ask someone the question, would you rather under prepare or over prepare for a tournament? I would always under prepare. And that's just for reasons that, if you under prepare, you at least have the things you have. But if you over prepare, that recovery may not be very good. And if you think in terms of longevity, any kind of injury will always set you back much, much more than if you were not injured. So if you didn't do enough, especially in the physiological area, it's probably okay. That's just life. But it's better not to overdo it because that's just much steeper cliff you have to climb back up if you kind of go off of that. So I like using Morpheus because they give you a daily recovery score. It's like a band you wear on your forearm. The work is from Joel Jamieson. Originally, it was Bioforce HRV, and I started this back in 2014. So it's pretty much recovery-based training. Like they tell you which kind of heart rate zones that you're training in, and it actually will change based on the recovery score you have every day. So then athletes know kind of when they can push themselves. So if they have a, maybe a moderate orange day, then they know that they have to be a little more careful. If they have a red day, they probably should not do anything super intense. Or if they're green, you can kind of knock yourself out, do whatever you want. So primarily that's something, and I don't know if I mentioned again, they look at heart rate variability. And I know there's a lot of different things. I also use an Oura ring now, but that will maybe be for the next presentation. So I kind of see how good it is, because sleep is also going to be very important for recovery. Breathing is kind of interesting because it's something I'm looking into and trying to understand, because usually we only look at breathing when there's dysfunction, but can you optimize breathing? Because controlled breathing can help with recovery, lower heart rate, and there are other benefits based on factors such as nasal versus mouth breathing, breath holds, and even ways to enhance performance like power breathing, which is taught from Strong First. So that's something, again, I'm biasing towards, but maybe that will change based on the evidence that kind of comes out in the future. The last thing I'll address here is periodization wise. So for coaches, I prefer block periodization, but I was more of an international athlete at the time. So I had many competitions. If you're just kind of training someone to peak for that one major tournament, like a junior nationals, then traditional periodization is probably fine. But I think once you get more than about 4 major events, then you might consider doing things in blocks. That's the work from Vladimir Isirin. You can look more into that if you want to, but again, it's just the way things are structured are a lot easier to kind of transition. But again, it's just a plan, and again, it's just my bias. Okay, so we look at some observations in this attribute. So we have very limited time in training. So unless training is more than, let's say, 2 hours, I would say don't do physical training in your badminton training, because you should spend that time focusing on the technical and tactical parts of badminton. Physical training, when should you do it? You should do it on your own time. That's like homework. That is something you can do off the court. And I'm pretty, I did this a lot, where when I started training by myself a lot, I was like, okay, when I'm on court, I need to spend that time on court with people. If I have to, have time by myself, I can do the physical training on my own. And that's something that I would recommend, unless your athletes are averse to physical training on their own and they will not do it, then you will have to make that compromise. Warm-ups, again, too, similar, don't kind of kill your athletes in the warm-up because that's gonna affect your other training. I don't like, I don't necessarily believe in training people when people are tired because I think you have to be at a certain level for that to actually be a thing. I think even based on my experience working with the kids I work with now, like none of them are that tired. I feel they're not tired. They'll lose before they get tired. So that to me is more like technical and tactical things that they need to look at first, and then you can maybe kind of go by, okay, then we'll kind of work on making you tired and then seeing how you can manage that. But the more efficient you are, or the better your technical is, then the better your tactical can be. And then hopefully that would help you with the physiological attributes. So the easiest example is, singles, of course, you can kind of cheat with physical, but in doubles, if you don't have those technical skills to play defense and the drives, you're just going to get killed and you will not be tired. So that's something to really consider, at least in terms of my observation. Mixing physical and technical. So I have a tennis racket that just kind of symbolizes like, use of heavy rackets or anything to make the racket more heavy or, weight vest, ankle weights, those kind of things. I'm not very sure where I stand on that because in other sports, I know like they used to have weighted bats in baseball, but they found that the weight was maybe too much and it started to affect their stroke, or sorry, their swing. And then because of that, if it's like too heavy of an implement, and if it's too heavy, you're doing hill sprints and the incline is too high, like you're using different muscles to compensate for that additional load. And because of that, your training effect is not probably what you think it is anymore. So if you use a heavy racket and do overhead swings, most likely you will start to train them to swing slower because they need to compensate for the slower swing. There may be sometimes you can do things to maybe there's a couple things you can do, but it has to be very kind of controlled with how much weight and like just pulling out a number is like maybe not even 10% more than what it is. Otherwise, it'd be technically too heavy. All right, so we're gonna go to technical. So for me, my bias for sure is one of the things I've always spoken of is that I value movement over stroke because at least for intermediate and advanced levels of badminton, because if you move well, it will address a lot of your hitting problems, but it's usually not the other way around, right? Just because you can hit a shot very well, it doesn't mean you're gonna move very well. But if you move better, like sometimes things naturally help itself. So if you change the stroke, then you have to address the movement again. And then once you include the movement speed to the shot, then you will have to address the shot again. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. The photos are just different players that I've been working with in Bellevue. And like you can see even like with certain shots, like everyone moves slightly differently. Strokes, generally you want things to be the same. So like on the bottom, like the scissor kick on the around the head side and the backhand side in the back corner tend to be in that kind of movement, but like, hand position, racket position, like it's going to vary. Another bias is toward external cueing, and this is the work from strength and conditioning, namely Nick Winkelman. You can look him up. And I do have his book, The Language of Coaching. I have still yet to read it because my reading list is ever growing, but I will get there eventually. But essentially, all you need to know here is research is shown that external cueing, which is focused away from the body, for example, reach for the ceiling, will help athletes better than internal cueing, where you would focus on a body part. So, for example, saying like elbow up higher. So that's something I think is new to badminton, and I think it would be very helpful, especially for beginners and intermediate players, because we are very kind of, I think, internal cue focused, like, use your wrist more, like elbow up, all those things are actually very internal based. So here are some observations. Again, style, like I'm sure as coaches, sometimes people will say like, oh, but this person does it this way. And I usually tell them that's okay. Like I want you to do it this way, but there's an element of style to it. You don't have to do it exactly that way, but as long as you get the key points, you can kind of do it however you want to, as long as the effect is still good for you, right? If it doesn't work, then probably shouldn't do it that way. So, I mean, I do have a large tech base where I coach, so I would equate it to, like style preferences when you're coding, right? Some, if you aspire to higher levels though, then you have to be kind of careful. But if you're coaching someone who's just recreational and they have no means of getting very far, then something that works for them is going to be a lot more useful than something complicated that doesn't. So like that's one of my personal challenges because I'm always like thinking of higher levels, but trying to find things that work for people. Again, it's essentially you have to cater to your athletes and what they really need. Here's something I developed. Actually, let me explain habits versus skills first. I got this concept from Josh Hillis. He's I think a nutrition coach and also works with behavior change and some psychology. So I think in his book I was reading, he said basically habits are things you kind of tend to start to do automatically, but you'll have good habits and you'll have bad habits. Skills, on the other hand, you want to think of things as skills because if you don't do it, then you just stay the same. So not doing something isn't going to make you worse. You just kind of stay the same. And to kind of be better at it, just kind of keep practicing. So you can see how that would work in, let's say, a nutrition standpoint. And here I've kind of created something based on what I had to do way back when I was working with Kim Dong Moon when I was training Calgary. And these are all cues that pretty much came from him. I just kind of revamped it and I just put it like on a hand. So again, this is a pretty good, I find it's quite useful for players, and I've introduced this to our players, and within the one session, they're able to remember all of the 5 key points. So just a quick explanation of what this means. So the thumb is to stay low because the thumb is the lowest finger, well, lowest of all your fingers. So that's the memory aid there. So staying low pretty much pretty much means to keep a defensive posture. And stay low, bend your knees. The cue I had was eyes below the tape. If you're working with really small kids that are naturally eyes below the tape, then you will have to find a different reference point, of course. The second one is second shot, prepare for second shot. The second one is based on the second finger. So your pointer will represent the cue to remember to prepare for the second shot. So every shot you hit is the first shot, and then always prepare one more shot. And especially when you play athletes at higher levels, they should really, really make sure that every time you think you can kill it, just be ready for one more. And it's just a good skill to have. The middle finger represents rack it up. The memory aid is rack it up, not middle finger up. And usually kids will giggle at that one, but they will always remember that one. Rack it up, it's not necessarily rack it up, but most of the time it should probably be up. It refers more to rack it out in the position you want to give you the greatest positioning advantage, but generally the racket probably needs to be up more than anything else. The fourth one is to hit and step and recover at the same time. This is usually the one that most people struggle the most with. I find that it's not always the case you can do this, but for a lot of times with defense and neutral shots, you will be able to hit, step, and recover. And this pairs very well with being ready for the second shot. So the memory aid is actually the fourth finger shares innervation and some musculature, some of the flexors with your pinky finger. So then when you move your fourth finger, your fifth finger kind of comes along for the ride slightly. So again, because of that, they should try and move together, just like the reference where you should hit and step together. Lastly, the short swing. your pinky is your shortest finger. So, you can compare it with the thumb. At least for me, my pinky is shorter than my thumb. And then so that'll remind you to keep a short swing. So again, the pinky is the shortest and the thumb is the lowest. So these are things you can teach to probably intermediate to even advanced kids, and then always have something to remind them. And then so now all I have to do is wag one of my fingers, not raise the third one, but I'll just kind of wag it this way, and then just to remind them what they should be doing, and then they usually will remember. So that's something to do in terms of more of a skill-based thing, and we would combine it with cueing and I guess style. All right, now we get complicated. I promise you there really isn't very much math because my math is very limited. I just like to use the concept of math to pretend that I am smart. So please bear with me. So my biases for tactical is I'm kind of anti-hack because just to explain that is because I find simplicity often lacking context, and especially if you're looking for tactics, like you can't just say, oh, just hit to the backhand. Like, okay, then what happens when they change? To just do this after, and then what happens if that changes? So then right away, once you have different strategies and tactics, it gets quite complicated, and just to have a certain hack for things to do, like, will always depend on the difficulty you're looking at. So that's why it's probably best not to think in terms of such simplicity. But again, that would be my own personal bias. So related to the previous point, many things in badminton are conditional. So I used Bayes' theorem to kind of represent the conditional probability, because badminton is a sport where things depend on your previous condition. So for example, your base position, let's say in singles, is going to be conditional based on your previous shot. Right? So you're not always waiting in the middle. Given that you hit to their backhand side, you can probably guess that it will more likely come back straight, and you have to cover more of a straight return than a cross-court one because you can maybe cut off that angle. So thinking in terms of that will kind of make things a little bit more complicated, but it will provide context. So if you spend the time to understand things better, and your athletes do the same, then they have hopefully a better understanding of the game, and hence be able to use more tactics in general. So observation-wise, there is a difference, I would say, between reacting and anticipating. And so, like, if you understand whether an athlete is reacting to a shot or anticipating a shot is important, because their movement timing will change. So anticipating means you're probably moving earlier, and reacting is you're going to be moving later. So this is also a difference between singles and doubles. So you can actually say the split step timing for singles and doubles will actually be different based on what you need to do. You probably have to anticipate more in the doubles, and you can do that more. So then your split step timing will usually be faster. So every time I go from like singles to doubles, or usually doubles to singles, it's really messy, and that's going to be a very natural thing to happen. So I would say athletes will typically be more reactive in the end game when there's like that uncertainty and you don't want to make those mistakes, and everyone kind of plays it safe. So when you play it safe, you're not going to move early. You're going to be very careful. And then so everyone's going to be quite reactionary, and then the game becomes quite even. This is also something that happens when you play someone new for the first time, and you'll find that you're just kind of testing the waters and seeing what other people will do. So you'll tend to be a lot more reactive than anticipatory. But at some point, you have to know when to be able to anticipate, make the right guesses. And that's kind of what makes the game so awesome, because again, it's a bit of a guess, which I will cover in the next point. So change or stay pretty much involves looking at the tactical part of, do I change my tactic or do I stay the same, right? And this is practically, I would say, playing rock, paper, scissors, right? If you do rock, paper, scissors, right, and you win, right? Like, okay, so if you play again, so like the next rally, are they going to keep it the same, or are they going to try and change? So you'll find that stronger players will be able to adapt a lot better again, based on the conditionals given when certain things happen, right? So pretty much this is something to understand that like you can sometimes lose because you just make the wrong kind of guess, and that's okay because you don't know what the outcome is, right? Sometimes you have to just do something, and it's often better to do something than to do nothing, because if you do nothing and not hit the shuttle, then you're automatically going to lose. So of course, if you can anticipate when your opponent will change, hopefully your change will be something that will keep you on top. But again, this is pretty much the battle that we have every time we play someone on court. And just to understand this as like a fundamental idea will probably help you. And I always ask my players, right, do you think it's time to change your strategy, or do you want to keep the same one? And I use that a lot just to kind of give them a bit more autonomy on court, which I will elaborate on later on. The last point is a little bit more mathematical, but just very, very lightly. I don't like the idea of looking at averages because even considering like average shot per rally, it's probably going to be positively skewed because you'll have more short rallies than you will have longer rallies. And then it just kind of helps you frame your decision making on, and even on your fitness levels, right? Like the question I ask people sometimes too, and you can ask yourself this question, right? So if you know your level of fitness can last you for, let's say, 15 shots, right? And then your rally actually goes more than 15 shots. So is it actually better to just throw that rally away? Because if you kind of keep going and go, let's say 30 shots for that rally, you're going to sacrifice your fitness for the next however many long rallies you need to recover. And given that every rally is worth just 1 point, right? It's probably in your best interest to just, go for a winner and just try and end that, so then you can maintain your fitness for the rest of the rallies. However, if you've ever create a league or something, that would make the game way more exciting, because if your rally length increased and it's actually starts to be worth more points, then it would be actually a much different game. And then the risk may be warranted, because if you fight for it and it every 10 shots it's worth another 1 or 2 points, then if you win 3 points from that one rally, then probably it would be a better decision. But since it's just worth 1, I would probably just go for the winner and just hope for the best. Okay, so we're in the psychological part. This is the last of the 4 attributes, so timing is actually not too bad. This section, so again, my biases is I turned to Stoic philosophy. I just stumbled upon it right after I finished my Rio qualification. So I did make it. I think that summer I read Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And trying to cover this, I'll try and keep it like as consistent as possible, but I do apologize if I jump around a bit, because there are a lot of things I'm trying to press together. So I really liked it because it worked for me as an athlete, and it also now works for me as a coach. And it's similar to other psychotherapies. So I listed those below: cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, and some parts of acceptance and commitment therapy. Although I would say Stoicism is more about trying to reason through your negative emotions, because if you kind of have an emotion and it's not very helpful for you, then you can kind of reason through that, this is not my reality. I can choose to make a change. Acceptance commitment therapy would be more like you just accept it, and then just kind of like, if it, is it helping me? No, but I'll just accept it and then try and take action to do something else. So again, this really helps with the concept of control. It helps manage expectations. And something from Stoic philosophy itself, at least the more modern Stoicism, is that there are 4 cardinal virtues. I think this actually came from Socrates, but this is probably the most I know of the history of that So the four virtues are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. So these are good to have both as a coach and as an athlete because, for wisdom, it's like acquiring and marrying knowledge and experience together, right? Justice is sportsmanship, do the right thing, do your duty, do your job. If you're feeding someone, you got to do it and do it well, right? Don't slack off, don't, make it all about you, right? Ego is the enemy. Courage is more about, I equate it to strength, right? You have the courage to do the right thing. So that also kind of goes with justice, right? And another expression that resonates with me, it's like, it takes strength to be kind to others, right? It takes a lot of strength to be kind. If you don't have that strength, then you really can't be nice to other people without being a doormat, which is also strongly not recommended. And then temperance is pretty much, moderation, discipline, humility, right? So if you really think about it, at least the way I've seen it, like I actually can equate these four with the gold medal profile attributes, right? I would say wisdom is kind of closer to technical, right? You have to know through knowledge and experience. That's your technical aspects. Justice is tactical, right? You have to make the right choices, do the right thing, given the situation you're in. Courage, strength, obviously would be the physiological side of things. And temperance, I feel, is closest to psychology because you really do need to be disciplined to be able to think through things. And that's kind of where it really kind of resonated with me because these are still concepts. And again, these are biases that which I hold, but I mean, you can probably find these aspects in other things as well. And just, again, find what works for you and go with that. Okay, so observation-wise, mindset is very common. I don't need to address that too much. Is the growth versus fixed mindset. That's been covered all too much. The work by Carol Dweck. So again, like sometimes I hear players, saying, I can't do this. And then so one of the strategies I learned from somewhere, I forgot the source, sorry, but it's like add the word yet, right? I can't yet. And then that kind of hopefully pushes them to be a little bit more growth mindset, in terms of, okay, just practice because you can't, it's fine. You can't do it right now, but that's just for now, right? Can't do it yet. Another one I like to ask players is, like, is this good enough for you, right? If they say yes, that's fine. I mean, if they truly believe it's good enough, that's okay. But I know usually the driven players, if you ask them if it's good enough, they'll be like, I think I can do better. And that's kind of one way to identify that kind of mindset. Don't force the growth mindset and, try and find a way to let it develop, especially in the younger athletes. But again, like one of my philosophies is to lead by example, right? So I don't want to give up before my players do. Intentions versus outcomes, that's one of the core concepts in Stoicism and also other philosophies. Really, like players, coaches, parents, and people in general, like you hold expectations about things, but these are all outcomes. And because they're outcomes, we cannot really control these, right? Wanting to win is an outcome. And badminton, unfortunately, for all of us is a zero-sum game, right? For every winner, there is a whole tournament bracket of losers, right? And that's fine. That's okay, right? So even personally as an athlete, there are many times I was so focused on winning that I just actually didn't know what to do. Like if you ask me, like, yeah, I know you want to win, but what are you going to do? It's like everything harder and faster. But again, that's not really a good strategy, right? So if you're just stuck on trying to win, then you really don't have any idea what you're doing. So when you come to, let's say, an intention instead, it's like, okay, I want to win, but how am I going to do that, right? What's my plan? And then so, okay, I'm going to try and execute this game plan. Whether it works or not, we'll, go from there, right? Then it becomes your conditional probability, right? Given that I tried this, what is the likelihood they will change, remain the same? So you can start to think these things together, and they actually, at least for me, it's kind of worked very well together. The last point, what's the score? It's Something I really pay attention to with athletes. I don't like what's the score because that's an outcome again, right? So things like I just need one more point, right? Okay, how are you going to get that point, right? What are you going to try and do? Like, or sometimes like people ask each other, like when they play, the kids especially, is like, how many points did you get against that? So I hate that because they're just focused on the result, and maybe the person they played just made more unforced errors, so they got 3 points, but they count that into their score. So I always will challenge them to think like, okay, how many points did you actually earn this time? Did you feel like it was a better game? And if they really believe it was good, that's totally fine, right? But I feel the older kids, the ones that really want it, will be like, yeah, I just tell them like, don't worry about the score, right? Just worry about like if you're doing the right things and how well you're able to execute them. And then worst case, you know what? Just try again, right? As long as you can try again, that's really the thing that makes the biggest difference. Okay, so wrapping up key lessons. So again, partially it's been associated with stoicism, memento mori, remember you are mortal. So that's good for general life in itself because we're all going to die regardless of whether you believe it or not. That's one of the things that will happen. If you consider that though, like for me as an athlete, right? My athlete life is technically over, right? So for players, sometimes reminding them that your athlete life is limited, whether you stop after you're a junior or whatever it is, right? Like enjoy the process because that's probably going to be what you remember more than the wins and losses. And sometimes when they have a tough loss, like at least you can still try again. And in the end, you'll start to hopefully respect the process a little better and hopefully use that actually as a life lesson because things are often very impermanent and we put sometimes too much weight on things that maybe have nothing to do with things that will help you in the future. Okay, so this one is fairly self-explanatory, right? Be the same when it works, but be different when it doesn't. It's again, like I was always concerned with trying to find different things. I probably should have focused more on things that do work, and I don't deny that. Like that was maybe one of the weaknesses I had, that I was so focused on trying to be a little bit different. So I'm trying to find new things, and that actually takes time, right? So that's like from computer science. So let's see, explore versus exploit, right? If you explore, it takes time, but you might find something that will really work and give you that advantage, or it can exploit the things that have worked in the past, right? So if it works for like a lot of people, then yeah, I think that's something you should have in your arsenal as an athlete. But try and find the things that aren't really cemented, things that maybe are starting to look that they can be improved, right? So again, like looking at recovery, where people like to grind it out, right? Then go the other way. What's the opposite, right? So yeah, I'm gonna look at recovery where everyone like pushes themselves too hard, right? Looking at like sleep when everyone thinks they should wake up early and just spend more time training, right? And then just like understand your nutrition, timing, all those things, like recovery modalities, right? Foam rolling, massage guns, whatever it is now, right? Breathing, right? Breathing probably is something that is neglected, I think, in a lot of sports, at least for badminton. But I'm sure there's a lot of things, I think, can you do recovery breathing to kind of bring your heart rate down faster between rallies? So again, there's a lot of things out there, and the best way to find it is probably through different fields, but maybe more related fields. Are they doing things in other sports, right? And then so that's where maybe it's best to question certain practices and make sure you are hopefully doing the best you can with what you have, which leads us to the next one. Life isn't fair, and that's very true, right? So again, like earlier before the webinar, we were discussing like Kevin was saying like, yeah, like I could train like Chou Tian Chen, but that's different because I can't beat Chou Tian Chen. That's a top player from Chinese Taipei. and that's true, right? Like some people will have more resources and some people won't. So the ones that can, get to go train and travel to all the tournaments because they can pay for it, then it's going to be different for the one who has to be very selective with the tournaments that they play. But you find the obstacle in the opportunity, find the opportunity in the obstacle. So meaning that, okay, well, I can't play the tournament, but maybe I can train more and then do better at a bigger tournament. So instead of focusing on what you don't have, it's again, make the most of what you do have. And that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned as an athlete. Okay, lastly, key lessons as a coach. So you control your intentions, not your outcomes. I'm bringing this back because it's important. Like, especially as a former player, it's easy to understand what to do if you're playing yourself, but to understand your athletes, their current abilities, and how you can work together to, get the outcome that you both want, at least with the intention to achieving that outcome. That's a different difficulty level, right? Like a lot of times I can be like, oh yeah, just backhand clear, right? Like, I mean, that's not something you would tell some of your junior athletes if they can't backhand clear. So again, you have to understand what their limitations are so that you can find a strategy that can work for the both of you when they are playing in competition. This one is quite significant. Actually, hindsight is 2020. The coach technically can never be wrong if you're always coaching in hindsight. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, you should have done that shot instead. Like, okay, yeah, of course, right? Because the thing just happened. So you'll find that the greatest coaches are the ones who have the insights to be like, I think this is what's going to happen in the game, or this is what your opponents are trying to do. So you need to do this, right? So they're in a way better able to predict what is happening in the game. And that is kind of the coaching that I would strive to try and learn to do. But ultimately too, I do want to let the athletes choose what they want because it's their game. And I don't want to be like, you must do this thing, right? Try and I actually don't use very confident language. If you look at it, I'm like, maybe try this, or it's probably this or that, or kind of give them a bit of a selection so that ultimately they can still decide for themselves and have the autonomy to play. And again, you're working together. They're not just a robot, which you're trying to give instructions to do. And I think that in itself kind of is really just giving respect to your athlete in terms of understanding that, hey, this is your game, this is your win. Like you got to do what you got to do to accomplish that. Okay, so this is actually, I wrote this, no job is ever thankless if you are grateful for the opportunity. And I find that as a player, like, because it was super competitive, I was probably leaning more to the word Schadenfreude. It's a German word for, like taking pleasure in someone else's failures or misery, right? So secretly, like, sometimes it's hard because if you're competing with other people for funding, it's like, if they don't get that result, then your chances of funding are a little bit better guaranteed. And it's difficult because of the way it was structured at the time where like, maybe because I didn't get a result that I needed or something happened and I screwed up somewhere, even though like it was just the one-off result based on the current criteria that was at the time. Someone else I felt that I was better than would end up getting funding and I didn't. And so that's a very tough thing to kind of accept as an athlete because it's like, well, given that they're the ones funded and you're not, that means it's like you're not better than them, even though your results actually may be better. It's just actually how the structure of the system works. And that's why, you're a poor soul in sports administration because you got to deal with the complaints and the arbitrations and everything because that's part of the job. So I finally stumbled on the other part of the word. The opposite is Mitfreude, which means, like just being happy for other people's successes. And if you can really practice that and actually, live that, it kind of takes that weight off your chest because like you just, anything that happens, you don't think that, you don't feel that you're missing out. You're just grateful and you're happy that they can, have that chance, right? And then being happy for other people will, take that load off. It takes away the envy, the jealousy, all that stuff. And you can then focus on doing what you need to do whatever goals you have set for yourself. So as a coach, right? Like, I mean, I may not always work with the best players, but my goal really as a coach is to help every player be the best of whatever, they can get. Maybe that won't be like winning a title or anything. Maybe it's just winning one round. Maybe it's just even having a really good game or winning consolations or something. But if that's kind of what the best of what they have based on their situations and circumstances, then I think that's still a rewarding experience to help people again with also what they have. Okay, so in conclusion, just a couple extra points. Coaching has been a blessing, and there will be days that I'm tired, but I tell myself that I have the chance to make an impact in the lives of others. So lessons in badminton can also be life lessons in school, work, relationships, and more. And understanding how to communicate with others and inspiring them to do their best is incredibly rewarding. So as a player, I learned that I need to be the best with what I had. So that doesn't mean winning everything. Again, it's just the intention is do the best with what you have. We don't know what that is, right? So as a coach, I'm trying to teach my athletes the same thing, right? Just do your best, don't worry about winning or losing. Just, try, make a plan, go for it, and then we'll kind of see what happens, right? We'll love you anyway for that, right? It just, again, give it your best effort. And with that, you shouldn't have any regrets, right? So again, remember, we cannot control the outcomes as players or coaches. So, chasing results, or worse, chasing your athletes' potential results will often lead to disappointment. But, we can all win if you all enjoy that process, the moment to moments, daily training environments. And again, just trying to be a bit better than we all were yesterday and trying to do that in all aspects of our lives. So I guess in a way, coaching gives back proportionally to the amount that I give it. So that's why the grass is green on both sides. Thank you.